Alright, the title of this is Hikikomori and Love. Love for a Hikikomori will most likely never be fully experienced if they remain a Hikikomori. Love to a shut-in is completely imagined and is a concept that they fantasize and wish they could one day attain. The issue is that this one day, or the chance of it ever happening, is just something that they cling to. A Hikikomori will never fully experience love because they're so walled off. A Hikikomori's entire concept of love is imagined. It's a fantasy. They'll recede into their minds and media, consuming any kind of film or animation that resonates with their identity or what they imagine to identify with. The more they identify with the general theme of a movie or show, the more likely they're going to live vicariously through it. They believe that maybe one day they'll be able to recreate this template of real life they're watching, but will most likely never put in the effort or have it come to fruition because they never leave their home. Without some intervention, they will continue to live ensconced in their room, never leaving, because their household or their parents will continue to enable their negative behavior by allowing them to stay. The toxic shame that the Hikikomoris have compounded within themselves will take over to the point that if ever they do leave their house, they'll feel completely inferior to others, believing that there's something inherently wrong with them and that they're defective. They can't be loved for who they are because their mindset is, who would want to be with me? I'm not exciting, I'm boring, I'm nothing, I'm not good enough. If they ever break the chain and form a relationship with someone else, it will usually be an unhealthy one, for they haven't learned how to fully set up proper boundaries due to their upbringing. In an interpersonal relationship, they can't genuinely involve themselves with any interaction because they're always holding a piece of themselves back. The Hikikomori is likely to behave this way, and even if they ever get out of this situation, there is an overwhelming chance that they're going to replace their parents as their emotional anchors and latch on to someone else whose relationship mirrors that chaotic childhood that they had as a kid. That new person and that new relationship on the front end is going to appear great and the true cure to what's been plaguing them for so many years, but there's an overwhelming chance that it's a recipe for disaster. Avoidant types severely lack boundaries, which is ironic because they wall themselves off physically and emotionally. They have trouble saying no to people who need help, even if it's at the expense of themselves. They allow a high level of mistreatment, minimizing any kind of verbal or physical abuse that they might endure, and this is because they grew up with so much of it, and that they just learned to ignore it for the sake of peace. It's also because they fear going back to their pre-relationship lifestyle so much that they prefer the company of mistreatment than no company at all. This lack of boundaries puts them at a severe risk when re-entering into society. Hikikomoris in a toxic relationship post-isolation would describe their new union as a bond formed in another life, but that veneer is fleeting, and they soon realize that they've recreated the same negative dynamic that existed in their childhood with someone else who is also fractured. These kinds of people prey on the weak, quote unquote, and the Hikikomori's lack of boundaries to protect themselves make them prime prey. Many will often say that the relationship cured them from their hermit behavior, when in reality the relationship was the defining proof that it did in fact not cure anything, and that it was just another form of escapism. There's a good chance that when in a relationship with a Hikikomori, that they will themselves be manipulative and will wear a mask. They cannot truly be themselves because they were punished for it when they were young. They assume one identity with one group and a different identity when at home. This is why they're in their rooms, because that's the only place where they can most be themselves, even if it's only through fantasy. They disengage and exist vicariously through whatever can sustain them until they have to face the reality that one day will come when they don't have their parents to support them. They will manipulate their significant other to get their needs met, utilizing covert agreements. An example would be doing something nice with the expectation of getting something in return. They struggle to vocalize their needs as a way to get them met because their own needs were not met during childhood. They had to resort to these tactics because as a child these needs were neglected, and that they resorted to this behavior and have subconsciously implemented them in their newfound relationship to get their needs met. When the covert agreement is not kept, they will resort to passive-aggressive behavior and not communicate what is truly upsetting them. They will stomach this long term and will later wonder why it didn't work. How could they do this to me? I was always giving. When in a relationship, the Hikikomori will conceal as much of their true self as they can because they have not learned that by simply asking one can get their needs met, and that they have to wear these masks to get anything they want in life. They have to assume an identity to assimilate. Communication is the key to all relationships, and without clear channels, they're doomed. Despite the Hikikomori's love for their significant other, This significant other is just another form of escapism to them, because the significant other doesn't know the Hikikomori's true self. It is locked away deep within them until they are alone again. So they'll go back to consuming media. They'll long to have some kind of connection with another, but the fear of the perception of who they really are will force them to fully isolate themselves once again until they can truly decide to change their behavior.